after this.
Oh, we've gone live. No, only dinner.
Yes, hello everyone. We're just discussing our dinner arrangements.
Also, I'm sure if we say we're going to go live at 5 o'clock, it's now 12 minutes past.
It's 12 minutes past 5. This is not
do this early and then press and then go live at 12. Yeah,
I think so. I think that would be a much better way of doing things. So here we are. Got all our lighting. We're all set. So welcome everybody.
Your signal's gone a bit funny. You've got all pixely. Which is such a shame because I said that light you just put on.
Yeah.
Unless it's just my screen.
If anyone's watching and I look pixely, just now I look great. No, you've gone pixely. Anyway,
you did.
Welcome everybody. Fetch a cup of tea. It's 5:15. So we are supposed to have been here, as Katie just said, 15 minutes ago almost. And all sorts of technicalities. And Gida's on her way. She's stuck in traffic. So fetch a cup of tea and get some treats and join us. We are the three amigos, the Funeralistas. We're here to spill the tea on all things funeral. So, award-winning funeral celebrants. And I was trying to work out how many years you said we've got a particular amount of years of experience altogether. Can you remember what the figure was?
Oh, God, I can't remember. It's something like 30 years, isn't it?
Yeah, 30 years and a clutch of awards.
Well,
I think it might be.
Yeah.
30 years of experience.
We should count how many awards we've got.
Yeah,
and how many, or at least how many nominations and accolades. Not that it matters, but I guess the point is we've got lots of experience in this world. Is the point?
Lots of experience, lots of awards, lots of nominations, all of the things. So anyway, I'm going to introduce myself. Katie's going to introduce herself, and then when Gida gets here, she's out of traffic. She will introduce herself. You may have met us all the last couple of weeks, but if you haven't, you're welcome to be here, and that's brilliant. So I'm Jess May. I'm an independent funeralist celebrant, so I'm not a humanist and I'm not affiliated to any institution at all, or any religious or non-religious institutions. I'm the host of a podcast, which is my baby, called Opening Ceremony Podcast with Jess May. You can find it on Spotify, you can find it on YouTube, and it's all about this kind of stuff, really. And I'm a pioneer of living funerals, so it's kind of my speciality area of work. Over to you, Katie Costello, esteemed colleague.
Oh, thank you very much, Jessica May. I too have a podcast, Dying for a Cuppa, also to be found on Spotify, Amazon and Apple. Very much all conversations about death and dying, which is very much my world. I've been in end-of-life care for nearly 13 years. I'm a soul midwife, a funeral celebrant and a death educator. And at the moment, a lot of my time is spent travelling, educating. You're right over there. Travelling, educating, offering consultancy services for all sorts of different organisations. So to improve end-of-life care, to improve conversations, and just to improve everybody, hopefully as a human being, to get better at death, because we don't do it well.
And Dying for a Cuppa is your brand,
Dying for a Cuppa, yes. Dying for a Cuppa. We have Dying for a Cuppa, the podcast. We have Dying for a Cuppa, the masterclass, which is the death education. And we have also Dying for a Cuppa, the professionals, which is a coaching container and coaching options that I offer for anybody that might want to work with me personally.
So she doesn't have much going on, she just sits about most of the time. The massive crash was my ring light that I was so proud of. And I was smugly like, oh yeah, I've got a great light. And Katie was really jealous, and then it collapsed on me. So that's what that noise was. So this week we decided... What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, no, you're still pixely to me, but you still look really bright, so I wouldn't worry.
You look pixely. Oh, well, hopefully it'll all be all right in the end. So this week we decided to talk about what makes a good funeral director. So we talked a little bit about how to choose your celebrant last week. So if you want to catch that, that's last week's thing, and you can find that on YouTube at Jess May Celebrant at the moment. And we've got an Instagram called The Funeralistas. So we are every week exploring something about funerals, basically, because that's our area of work. And we feel like there's not enough information out there for people who might be having to sort out a funeral for someone they love or for themselves, and they don't know what the choices are. That's our big thing. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start off with talking about 3 different things that we thought of that would make a good funeral director for us. And I'm going to let Katie start, because I think Katie's got a little bit more knowledge and experience around that. And she's also thought it through a bit more than I have.
So basically I prepared and you didn't. No, I think so. This follows on from, doesn't it? Last week when we met, we talked about the importance of finding the right funeral celebrant. And we started, then Geeta started asking us questions, didn't she, about things that we would want. So we just thought we'd keep it quite simple to come up with hopefully kind of a list of things that people should think about, or 3 things that we think it's important you have choice around when it comes to funerals connected to funeral directors. So the first thing that came to my mind when I thought about this, because it's happened to me recently, is in this situation, if you are going for a traditional funeral service in a crematorium, I really want people to know that they need to investigate and find out the timings of the service. So every crematorium works slightly differently. And if you are booking a standard single slot in a crematorium, that could look very different creme to creme. So one crematorium might have a slot every hour. But what that actually means is that if you have your service at, say, 12 o'clock, although the next one in their chapel isn't due until 1, they expect you to be in and out within 40 odd minutes. Now, you have some crematoriums, there's one that I've worked at a few times in London, where they have a slot every 40 minutes. So if you have a service at 12, the next service is at 12:40. So actually you have about 25 a push minutes for the whole of the service. And that is to get everybody in, to get everybody out, and to leave enough space so it doesn't feel like a conveyor belt, although it often does. But to minimize that feeling, you need to get out and out the way so the next service can come in. So what I don't think happens enough is that people actually investigate when they say, oh, we'll just have a single slot at the crematorium, actually how much time then you have. And I say that because also you have the option to book a double or even a triple slot if you want at the crematorium. But you need to have these conversations with your celebrant, if anything, first and foremost, because your celebrant will be able to discuss with you the content that you want and be able to advise, actually, we're not going to fit that into 30, 40 minutes. Why don't we look at a double slot option? Of course, there's a cost implication, but you need to have this conversation with your funeral director as well. So it's a case of everybody working together, singing from the same hymn sheet. Because so many people I know have gone to a funeral director said, oh, no, most people fit in a single slot and it's fine. And most people do that because that's the norm, but that's not the norm for everybody. So I want people to know that they have choice about timings, how many slots they book, and it's up to you, not the funeral director. Now, if you've gone to a funeral director and they can't accommodate a double slot, if you've booked a 12 o'clock slot and actually you then decide you want the 1 o'clock as well, and the crematorium confirm that it's free, if your funeral director can't accommodate that, you can swap your funeral director. But that's okay. There's only a bit of paperwork that gets in the way that needs to be sorted between funeral directors. Geeta's joined. So I just want people to understand that you need to have these conversations when you are talking about the content of your service, because it may be that actually it's appropriate that you do cut some of the content because you want to keep it in a smaller time frame. But if the content is that important, you don't have to. And I also advocate for that. I really encourage people to have a look at the crematorium price lists, because I know of a funeral director that puts a markup even on the double slot at the creme. So the figure they told the family was £600 more than what the crematorium advertised. So again, you need to just know your onions and have a look into this. So that's my first thing. And that's the longest one. The others are quite short. The other thing I think people need to know they have a choice on with funerals that they can work with the funeral director with is your orders of service. You don't have to have anything printed or any kind of stationery if you don't want to. But if you choose to, check what the funeral director can offer you as regards their design, desk stuff, whatever they use, packages, what are they called, like websites or whatever. Or you could choose to do it yourself. Whether you can design something or you can pick stuff off Etsy, templates, there's lots of ways to do it. And you can have something as creative or colourful or full of pictures or traditional and formal as you like. So just because a funeral director gives you 5 options, you don't have to pick one of those. You can create something or even contact your celebrant who might be able to help you. And I've done that for a family recently. I wasn't available for their service, but they wanted me involved. So I created the order of service with them while another celebrant has done the service with an FD. So it's been a real team effort. And the other thing that I just wanted to highlight about choices with your FD is if you are choosing a coffin, if you are choosing something traditional in the sense of like a wooden coffin, check if they're charging you for the handles. Because again, handles on a wooden coffin are useless because they're either, even if they're brass or that most of the time they're plastic, sometimes they're only a tenner. But do you want handles? Do you need handles? If it's a wooden coffin, you can't use them because they're not weight bearing. You can have the handles on a coffin if it's wicker or anything like that because they're all woven in. But I want people to know, because again, I know of a couple of funeral directors that have put a stupid markup on £100 set of handles that are absolutely useless, but then they've queried my fee and said it was £50 more than another celebrant that they used. But they've paid £100 for handles that don't work.
That's amazing.
So I think that's a really important thing to discuss.
Yeah, and also sometimes they're ecologically really unfriendly and they can't put them into the cremator and all of that.
Exactly.
So you've got the three things. So your good funeral director is going to tell you the actual timings of your creme and not charge you extra money for
and find out what you
slot.
need. Yeah.
Find out what you need, not tell you that you can only have a single slot. Will not be giving you just automatically telling you that you have to have handles on your coffin because actually you don't need to do that. And what was the second thing?
And they will give you order of service. No,
order of service.
Service in the handles.
Yeah. So with the order of service, you don't actually, you can do it yourself. You can have them do it. You can work with you collaborate with your celebrant. You don't only have to have their templates. So it's all about them giving you more information rather than just telling you that you've only got you have to have these handles, you have to have 20 minutes, and you have to have like this order of service with a lily on it. None of that's true. You have to have. Yeah. So your good funeral director is going to tell you what your choices are.
Yes.
Is the main thing.
Depending on what you need, not what they recommend. Yeah. There she is.
Much more about what you're offered.
Got home out of traffic.
She got home. We were 13 minutes late starting anyway. We had all kinds of disasters. So anyway, so next time we're going to start early and then we'll all be on time, which is optimal for all of us. So this is Getting Honest. Here she is. She just returned from teaching at the Humanists UK, teaching about multilingual ceremonies today. So we just started on the 3 things that make a good funeral director. Katie, in true to form, has done loads of prep. Have you done any prep? Because I'm kind of making it up as I go along because I've had lots happen. Have you got 3 things that are what makes a good funeral director?
Well, I tend to look at the broader aspects. So my first one is in Katie's vein. It's what I'm thinking about broader in that a good funeral director does everything bespoke. That everything they do, there is no packages. And the good thing is I can also talk from the point of view of being a funeral director and doing that myself. And I'm lucky to work with a funeral director that is independent, progressive, and 100% bespoke. So I've never heard of or experienced a markup on the actual crematorium slot there. We certainly would never do that. There is a margin applied to even ordering the music and things like that, but that's because the work that we put in doing it, so doing that work.
Oh, the admin
so
and
there
stuff.
Is a margin on that. There is a margin on the coffin, but that is because we're also spending time finding the right one, dealing with the supplier, and sometimes you can't get it and need to go and find another supplier because it really is about being so bespoke that they're saying they want this type of coffin. If this supplier that we would have used normally, they don't have any in stock or something, we will spend loads of time making sure we can try and find it somewhere else. So that's it. And for example, we ask if they want an order of service, and if they do, we ask them what type, and telling them it doesn't have to be the standard. You can have 8 pages, you can have a card type, you can supply your own design, you can even do it yourself. And actually, when people hear that, they decide, well, actually, my cousin's a graphic designer, or one I did recently, my neighbor was a printer, and he can do it as well. So that's nice. I 100% agree with that. So my first one was about being bespoke. And I think the second one is that they will go out of their way to make the wishes, make it happen, and also be able to hear in the conversation, be able to understand what it is they really want, and might not know there are some options that they can't have. What if so recently someone wanted a natural burial, they wanted to be in nature, and we have a local natural burial ground, Clayton Wood, but their hall for the service will hold a maximum of 60, and they had 100 and possibly up to 140. So actually went out of our way to find an alternative venue. So a barn place where they have weddings is very close by. It has a nature around, and just because, and then you could still go and do the burial. It doesn't have to be on site, for example, because the ceremony was really important, and especially with so many people turning up. And at this time of year, you don't want to be standing at the graveside for an hour.
So, that's so interesting. I've had it before where they all hang out outside because the funeral directors just said, "This is the creme."
Yeah.
Then they ended up exactly that, but there was nowhere for anyone to stand.
This is the chapel. Yeah.
So that's what I would do as well if I work as a celebrant. If I don't wear my funeral director hat, I'm just a celebrant, and it's through another funeral director. Then I will get in there early, hopefully, and try and talk to them and say, have you spoken to the funeral director? You had this meeting, and as a celebrant, I was saying, have you thought about these things? They've said, oh, we've got to do this. And I said, trying to find out and help them speak to the funeral director, know what to ask the funeral director about, and also say, this is what we want, and be able to say, well, if you can't do it, then we'll find someone else. And I think a good funeral director also encourages you to shop around. So if I have someone, if I have the, as I call the death line, sorry if it's crass, but there is a 24-hour phone line that funeral directors have. Is someone ready to take that call and talk to them, whether they decide to go with you or not. And I even say to people, they don't know for sure. I said, well, if you want, we can take your person into our care and they can be with us. That doesn't mean you haven't committed to working with us. You will, of course, pay for the time that the person, when we look after them, have them in our mortuary. But, until we sign a contract and until you are happy with everything, you are not bound by anything. So from the get-go, understanding that they have choices, and usually that means that they do want to go with you because they understand that they'll be well looked after and listened to. So, just to put it really broadly, that a funeral director actually listens, not just listen to what they actually say but also read between the lines, listen to what it is that's important. And that's something we as celebrants are amazing at. But some funeral directors, some people, funeral arrangers that work for a funeral director, they just start in that role to do a bit of admin, so they have only learned it through that business and maybe not further. So the actual funeral director, the owner of the business, I think should really understand the whole spectrum of the funeral industry. And with that, I also think it's really important that a funeral director works well with other suppliers in the industry. In the sense that they have good connection to coffin suppliers or celebrants, or, maybe have looked into a bit more in alternative venues to have a funeral ceremony or a celebration of life. I think that's really
so you've both touched on collaboration there, which I think is something that you don't necessarily see a lot of. So you're three, so you've got bespoke, so absolutely bespoke service. Really great at actually listening to all the gaps and all the in-between things of what isn't being said. And then what was the third thing? The collaborating, but also there was something broader.
Working well with, you don't have to have direct collaborations, but working well with or willing to.
And also you said
and use other people.
And you said willing to say, we can't do that, and reach out as part of that, isn't it? Just
not
saying
necessarily
we can't do that,
but let's say you can't get a particular coffin, you will be also being honest with the client and saying,
but willing to call other people that might be.
Here are some alternatives. What about this? And
so that's really client-centered is the thing, isn't it? With that, so I was thinking as I'm standing here, I'm thinking on my feet. So one is really, really a bit nebulous, but I think for me, kindness is really important. So I want my funeral director to be compassionate and kind and sensitive. That's one thing. And I always think with a good funeral director is both really kind and compassionate, but really on it logistically. So you have all the detail taken care of and the practicalities and all the hard stuff, So they need a really good blend of hard and soft skills, I think. So I want someone to be really, really kind to me. I want them to be really on it in terms of organisation and detail. And I think the third thing I was thinking of then was transparency. So I want to know if they do embalming or they don't do embalming. I want to know where my person is going. I want to know who owns the business. I want to have all that information available to me. I don't want it to be anything to be hidden. So any nasty surprises or things happening to my person that I wouldn't have known about. So I think those are my three, really: the kindness, the transparency, and the logistical, like, detailed planning. I like someone to do my funeral who's got OCD. That's what I like. I like a funeral director with OCD, because I want to know that they've thought all the things that you said, Gita, about, is there enough room to take, is there a capacity here for this number of people? Are we going to be able to get the coffin in? How far is it to the venue, and how many miles, and what about traffic and all of that? And I love it when a funeral director wants my script in advance, and they want, and I mean, I had one in Natural Undertaking in Birmingham. They would I always send it, because yeah, every time, because, well, I
never.
Yeah, I'll get on to why. I've never done it before, but then my the woman I worked with, because we collaborated very closely for that exact thing, really. We happened to have a really close working relationship, and she said, Jess, I always ask for a copy of the script, because if you don't turn up, I want to know that I can stand at the front with that script and I can do the whole thing from nothing, just because I've got everything in front of me. So it's really interesting that you don't do that, because I do that I always send out a celebrant copy, and I've never known that other people didn't do it. So
how funny. Now I've heard
I
it
think
a
the
few
reason
times,
is,
but go on.
No, I think the reason is that you worked with some funeral directors that you have, and I know you have as well, Katie, worked with some funeral directors that you might not necessarily trust as much as those special relationships. And I obviously have a special relationship with Tora, who owns the Modern Funeral, where I do my funeral directing as well as some celebrant work. I trust her. She used to be a celebrant too, but I trust her. I actually know how meticulous she is with everything. I would share it there, but with others, maybe especially those naming no names that are chains, that are larger organizations, I don't necessarily trust what they do with it and who they share it with. And remember that as a celebrant, our words, are copyrighted. If we write it there, that is our intellectual property, and that unfortunately I've heard stories of that being not respected. Should we say it like that?
Do you send them a logistics page with, like, who's coming and what time you're arriving?
I often do an outline in an email, just to know what to expect if there's something. Mainly if it's out of the ordinary, I'll just tell them this is what's going to happen.
I think I've been going too far. I make them a logistics page that's A4 of everything. Maybe I'm projecting what I want from people, because I don't think of myself as meticulous at all, but I suppose, having worked in that context before, it's made me just habitually do that. Maybe I don't have to do that.
I think it depends who I'm working with. There are obviously, because I am independent and I don't have a funeral director. I have a couple that I've worked regularly with, which I love, but equally, because 80% of my work comes from people, I end up working with a whole host of funeral directors. So when I meet with the family, depending on their situation, when I send an email to the FD to go, hi, this is me, or, to kind of check in, if they're doing the order of service, obviously I send them the order that me and the family have created, and I might put on there, heads up, Bob wants to follow the coffin in, but the rest of the family want to be seated first. Also, please note at the end, if the family want people to leave, they're staying behind, then they want to close the curtain, or whatever it might be, all those little nuances that the family want, but they just go in an email, just in that kind of, hi, this is me. And then normally that's because I end up doing quite a lot of that, because the families, I will make whatever efforts they need happen. And that's where the FD goes, oh, well, we don't normally do that. And I'm like, Not my problem. It's what the family wants. So this is what we're doing. So, but I'd never, and I've been asked a few times, but very rarely have I ever been asked for my script. And sadly, the only times I have been asked is like, it's like Geeta said, the only times I've been asked is by FDs that don't know me, which to a point I can understand, because they think, well, hold on, if she's written 27 pages for a 30-minute slot, we're in trouble. So they might want to check. But I've never felt it's been asked with integrity. I felt that they basically want to check me out or be nosy. And I've said, with respect, you know, that's not normally the way that I work. The family have approved the script. I'm very well aware of the timings. This is, do you know what? They don't need to read it. There is absolutely no need.
It is interesting, isn't it? Like all these,
which isn't a bad thing.
Well,
I mean, I do send the order of service, whether they're doing the order of service either way, so they know the elements.
Yes, I might do that.
I think that's enough. I think that's enough.
I've
heard
exactly. And I think
I heard of a funeral director that took some of the that copied some of the stuff from the from the script and used it on a sort of memorial page online, you know, where people could access publicly, and that's, you know, interfering with our intellectual property.
Oh my God, you know what, people, you're hearing in real time. But it is interesting that so funeral directors vary so much. There you go. And you were just saying something really that made me think.
Sorry, I was just going to say quickly, I'd be interested if any FDs watch this, if we haven't upset them already, if people genuinely would want to comment, I'd be really interested to hear, because obviously we only know what we know with the FDs that we know. And we are all for choice and autonomy, but we're also for that collaboration. We want to work well with FDs. We want to have a fair and equal relationship with our funeral directors. It's a team effort. No one's anybody's boss. No one's any more important. We're all valuable and needed for that family. So I genuinely would be really interested to hear on some of the FDs, if anybody watches this, what their processes are and why, just purely for education.
Because they're probably receiving things from me that...
Sorry, Jess.
No. People are probably receiving, these funeral directors might be receiving things from me. I'm just thinking, why is she sending me all this stuff? And then I think it's partly maybe it's regional. Yeah, maybe it's regional. No, or maybe they're like, why would I want to print off all these pages and use all my ink? But perhaps like one thing happens in Birmingham, it doesn't happen in Brighton. It's like a completely different cultural attitude. So you will find, for example, if you go to a funeral director in particular parts of the country, embalming will be standard. I wouldn't be able to tell you where those places are, but there are different places where certain things are standard for funeral directors, and they're not in other regions of the country. You said something that I think we should really talk about, which is this line, which is, well, we don't normally do that. Can you give us some examples of what that might look like?
Oh, God, loads of things. So I did a double slot for a family, chose the double slot, but they wanted to start 15 minutes later. And that caused a right hoo-ha, because they had the crematorium had 2 chapels. So one started every hour and the other one was every half an hour. So I totally get the idea then that obviously no one's clashing as regards hearses and guests and everything. But everybody was in. They just wanted to do some things as a family outside, a few little rituals and time, and they wanted everybody milling about. So they didn't want to start the service until past. The FD went absolutely nuts. And I was like, how does it affect you? The family have booked a double slot. It's not impacting the time, as in we've planned this into everything else that they want. Oh gosh, another thing was where I was doing the music, putting it on Obitus. Well, we don't normally do that. That's normally our job. And I have no issue with either way, but the family have done it with me. We've sat with the library. They've picked their version of Hallelujah out of the 750,000 versions that there are. They just want me to do it. So that, you know, that's all because they trust that I've picked the right option and they know that they've got the right one. Things like order of service again. Oh, well, we normally do that. And even down to silly things like if I say to family, bearers, actually, we'll come back to that one. Things like, you know, well, the family and guests are going to follow. Oh, well, no, we normally get the guests in first. Right. But that's not how the family want to do it. And again, I've thought about time. I know there's a reason why that normally works, because you get everybody in. But in this situation, they want to do it that way and it will be fine. But bearers, I had quite a well-known chain. We all know who I'm talking about. Told a family. The family said, can we have bearers? And they said, no, we don't do that anymore. And the family said, oh, okay, well, I thought if we had a couple and you had a couple, there's a couple of people in the family that would like to do it. No, we just use wheels now. It's much safer, health and safety.
No, I
so the family spoke to me about it. And I couldn't help myself. I was like, that's not correct. Like, that's not factually correct. Of course there's health and safety, but it's because it's the hassle of them employing from that the bank of bearers, with people, because you have that, don't you? Or if they don't have any, and they said, oh no, it gets too complicated when it's family and bearers, so we'll just wheel that person in. And they were like, oh, okay. And it was heartbreaking.
That's infuriating because it's so...
And
awful.
Even the cost-wise, because you just
Awful.
add it to the invoice, it's just, you just charge for it.
Which people love carrying their people
but also,
in. That's something
how
really
much
important.
And it's the ceremony, but it's the feeling and the honour that these people wanted to do for their person. That was like, I want to bring my person in. That's the last thing I can do for them. And they got completely shut down. So that was awful, but it's all the silly stuff that we know that there's choices about, where a lot of FDs, we don't do that. Or double slots in itself is just something that some FDs will go, oh, it doesn't happen very often. Why not? Why aren't we giving people the option of more time? Just because it means that they get one less funeral a day, which is normally applicable to the bigger
as a funeral director, it's one
rather
of the
than the independents.
It's one of the questions I ask naturally. How long do you want to have? If you don't want to rush, do you want a double slot? I encourage it. So funeral directors doesn't make any money on that
pressure off.
But they're certainly going to make recommendations.
What people might not be aware of, if you're out there listening to this and wondering why you don't get offered double slots as standard by the big companies, is because they make more money if they squeeze more in. It's just like any other industry. If you can do more in a day, you get more money for what you're doing. And I don't think that's true of many independents, but the big ones. And I don't know, you might put me right on that, but I know that some of the bigger ones, they're just profit oriented, aren't they? We're running out of time.
They couldn't manage have them straight after each other anyway. So I think it's just they don't want to spend the time hanging around at the crematorium that long. They want to get home and do something, get back to the office and do something else. Because they don't make money. I'll
tell you another example as well of. No, but that's why I said in the beginning, I had an FD that added £600 onto the double slot. So the family said no, because they couldn't afford it. It was awful. But just go back to the other things that FD say isn't normal. I've had a couple of services now, but I remember the first time I did it where, people might have a visual tribute. So they had the music and the photos. Quite often it slots somewhere in the middle, 2/3 in, or in somewhere in the tributes. The family wanted it at the very end. So it was kind of like that last hurrah. So we did the committal, we did everything. And then we asked everybody, stay seated. And then we played the music and then everyone left. So me and the FD came forward and nodded to the coffin. And that was it. We told everybody, that's your cue, then take your time and we'll leave. So when this was in a crematorium, and when the FDs that were due in after us, because they saw the visual tribute, they assumed that we were only halfway through. So they were there. There was with this creme, there's an outside door and an inside door. They were literally opening the outside door, looking through the window at me and the FD as if to go, come on, because they were like, well, we don't normally do that. They couldn't think. And actually, it's so out of order. Even if we were running late, there's absolutely no way that they should have interrupted that person's service. But they made their presence known. Thankfully, most of the guests didn't recognise that we're further at the front, but myself and the FD did, because they were at the back. And the FD was looking at them as if to go, we're fine, like we're leaving in a minute, like it's finished. We were in plenty of time. But because it wasn't the norm, and then they afterwards said, well, we didn't know, you don't normally have the visual tribute, at the end. It's like, well, think, people, just, it's not your business to decide what is or isn't a normal service. You got my high horse and stuff like that.
She does like a high horse, but we all feel the same. And I think what
I love a soapbox.
She does love a soapbox. But I think what all of this is to say, go with an independent. Just go with an independent who is really transparent.
Can we say that?
I don't know. Yeah, I can. Really transparent, really kind and sort of, I don't know. I mean, there must be independents who aren't great. I'm sure there are.
I think it's also down to, just like you would choose a celebrant that you feel that you have good energy, good chemistry with, actually do the same with a funeral director. Make sure that you talk to the person who's going to be directing, who's going to be there on the day, and make sure that you feel that they're going to listen to you and actually look after you. And instead, sometimes you just work with a funeral arranger that sits in the office and never comes out. Maybe you need to make sure that you meet the team and ask who's going to be there on the day. Do they understand this? Are they going to look after me? And then they will hopefully also be the ones who'll be good on standing in the back, making sure everything else runs smoothly. And
it's a really
when another
great
funeral
question.
comes in like that, tell them to
definitely ask
on.
your people. I love what you've said. Ask your people. When you go to a funeral director, ask who's going to be there on the day. That's brilliant, actually. We've run out of time, so we should end with that tip. But it was just reminding me, just one last thought, that when in the olden days, when doctors had grey beards and they were all in their 70s, and they probably were in their 40s when we were young, but they felt like old men. And everybody just got told what to do with their bodies. That the doctor said, we have to do the thing the doctor said. And we would just go and do the thing because the doctor said, and they were figures of authority. And I feel that we're trying to dismantle that dynamic with funeral directors as well. There are so many great funeral directors out there, and many of them don't have that old-fashioned attitude. And obviously there's young ones coming up, but the ones who are really stuck in the mud will probably have that kind of, not only patriarchal, because they are largely men.
Well, I was going to say, if you want to be on the safe side, look for a woman. It's like what we tell our children. What we tell our children, if you're lost and you don't feel safe, find a woman, in the playground or whatever.
Find a mum.
Or as we used to say, find a nice lady. Okay, well, look, we've run out of time. Next time we're going to start on time. And so what we're going to do is tell you all... Yes, totally. So here we go. So I'm going to
talk about next week.
Well, there's something came up last week, and every time I listened to it, I thought that's what we were going to talk about. And it was something you said, Katie, and it was to do with funeral directors, and it was to do with things that, and I can't remember what it was. So if you've got any ideas out there that you want us to talk about, let us know. But if you can remember what it is, all the better. I can't. I didn't write it down.
One thing I think we should talk about is direct cremations.
Okay, let's do that.
In the sense of that being one thing, and then the impact of that, and then the other options around that, and the conversations that we should have.
Okay, so next week, direct cremations.
That was just something I thought about.
Yeah, that's a really, really good idea.
When it's an appropriate thing, and when it's maybe missold.
Yeah, and it might even be several weeks.
Exactly, and also exactly that. And then when you have, if that is what's happening, to really understand then what your still options are, and making sure that people understand if that's their choice as well, they need to be explaining to their people what that means as regards, do you still want them, or are they allowed to gather? You still need to voice the fact that, I don't care if you gather down the pub, but just, chuck me off over there and just dispose of my body, that's fine. But yes, you can still gather and do something. So just the emotional impact as well.
Given that we've got half an hour each time, I think we should separate that out and just do little segments about, maybe do a series around it, because it's quite a big subject and I'd really up for that.
Yeah.
So where are we? I've got a little script and everything. So thank you so much for joining us. We're
going to try and do this professional, weren't we?
Yeah, we were like not so great at that, but next time. So if you would like us to pay your community group a visit, you can find us on Instagram as the Funeralistas. You can find me at www.crazydiamondscelebrations.com. And I'm Crazy Diamonds Funeral Queen on Instagram, which is quite easy to remember. You can find all my socials on my website, but also I'm on Instagram and TikTok as Crazy Diamonds Funeral Queen. And then I'm going to hand over to Gida to explain where you can find her.
So currently you can find me on a subsection of my website that's mainly about weddings, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. And I believe if you search Gida Monis Funerals, you will find all the right places to go. There will be a new website soon, but Gida Monis Funerals, and that's GITTE Monis, MONIS Funerals, and you should find me.
That's kind of
and I believe there is. Do we link to our Instagram?
Yes,
individual Instagrams from the Funeralistas.
Yeah, we'll put all the links everywhere, and that's quite a good name to be remembering because it's quite unusual, so you won't forget. Katie.
I think everywhere you look for me, I'm KTC Soul Midwife. So Katie, letter C, Soul Midwife. That should link you to my that's my website. That's my email. And then KTC Soul Midwife on Facebook and Instagram. Put that in, and I pop up in a lot of places, whether people like it or not.
She does on her
Yeah,
soapbox.
that's me.
So join us next week, the Funeralistas. We've been the Funeralistas. So we are going to be live next week on time. Please join us. And it's been really